In 1934, a Kansas farmhouse recorded 78 barnators indoors, while the thermometer on the porch hit 108. No electricity, no fans, just design. One entry on this list was so effective that doctors actually prescribed it to patients. Another uses a physics trick that modern engineers are only now building back into skyscrapers. These 20 designs kept America cool for 2 centuries. Then the air conditioning industry spent millions making us forget every single one. Hit that subscribe button because what you are about to learn could cut your summer bill in half. Let us count down. Transom windows. That little rectangular window above every door in your great-grandmother's house was not decoration. It was machinery. A transom window, hinged at the bottom and opened with a long brass pole, let hot air escape from the top of every room while the door stayed shut for privacy. Heat rises. Everybody knew it. So builders in the 1880s and 1890s put an exhaust vent above every single interior door, and the whole house breathed like a set of lungs. A bedroom with a door closed and the transom open could drop 5 degrees in an hour because the hottest air near the ceiling had somewhere to go. Hotels used them, schools used them. Row houses in Baltimore and Philadelphia had them stacked down every hallway. The hardware cost maybe $2 per door in 1900, and it worked for the life of the building with zero energy. When central air arrived in the 1950s, builders sealed transoms shut or stopped installing them entirely because a house that breathes on its own is a house that does not need their product. Today, architects charge thousands to design passive ventilation systems that do exactly what a $2 hinge did in 1895. Deep roof overhangs. Walk past any farmhouse built before 1940 and look up. The roof does not stop at the wall. It reaches out 2, sometimes 3 feet past it, like the brim of a hat. That overhang was calculated, not guessed. Builders knew the summer sun rides high in the sky and the winter sun rides low. So, a properly sized eave blocked the brutal, high-angle July sun from ever touching the windows, while letting the low January sun pour straight in and warm the rooms for free. One design, 2 seasons solved. Carpenters carried the proportions in their heads, passed down from the men who trained them, adjusted for latitude, the way a tailor adjusts for shoulders. A south-facing window shaded by a deep eave stays up to 20-degree cooler at the glass than one in full sun, and the room behind it feels it immediately. Then the post-war building boom hit, and developers discovered that trimming the overhang back to a few inches saved lumber on every house. Millions of ranch homes went up with roofs cropped like crew cuts, windows blasted by sun all afternoon, and a brand-new air conditioner humming outside to fight a battle the roof used to win for free. Whitewashed walls and light colors. There is a reason every old photograph of a southern farmhouse shows a white building. There is a reason Greek islands are white, Spanish missions are white, and your great-grandfather whitewashed the barn every other spring. White surfaces reflect most of the sun's energy instead of absorbing it. A dark wall can run 40 degrees hotter to the touch than a whitewashed one standing in the same sun. Whitewash itself is almost free, just lime and water brushed on thick, and it did double duty by protecting the wood and discouraging insects. Families whitewashed in late spring as a ritual, the same way they planted the garden. The house went into summer wearing its reflective armor. Now, here is the part that should make you angry. Modern researchers have developed what they call ultra-white radiative cooling paint, coatings that can keep surfaces cooler than the surrounding air. And the study has made headlines as a breakthrough against climate change. The breakthrough is a better version of what every farmer in Alabama was doing in 1885 with a bucket and a brush. Meanwhile, drive through any new subdivision and count the charcoal gray houses with black roofs baking like cast-iron skillets, every one of them paying the power company for the privilege. Canvas window awnings. From 1900 to 1955, American downtowns and neighborhoods were striped like circus tents, green and white canvas, orange and cream, hanging over nearly every window that faced the sun. This was not fashion. Awnings were the single most cost-effective cooling device a homeowner could buy. Here is why they beat curtains and blinds every time. Once sunlight passes through glass, the heat is already inside your house, and no curtain can send it back out. An awning stops the sun before it ever touches the window. Studies later confirmed what awning salesmen already knew, that exterior shading can cut solar heat gain through a window by 65 to 77%. A canvas awning cost a few dollars a window in the 1920s, lasted about a decade, and turned the hottest rooms in the house into the most comfortable ones. Families rolled them down in May and rolled them up in October, and the whole street changed its clothes with the seasons. Then air conditioning arrived, and the awning industry collapsed almost overnight. The striped canvas came down, the compressors went in, and we started paying every month for shade we used to own outright. Raised pier foundations. Old houses in the South did not sit on the ground. They stood on brick or stone piers, 2, 3, sometimes 8 ft in the air, with open space underneath where dogs slept and children hid. And most importantly, air moved. That gap was a cooling system. Breeze flowing under the floor pulled heat out of the boards from below. So, the floor itself stayed cool under bare feet even in August. The ground beneath the house, permanently shaded, stayed cooler than the surrounding yard, and chilled the air passing over it before that air washed under the living space. Raising the house also lifted the living rooms up into the stronger breezes above the stagnant ground-level air, and it kept the structure dry in flood country as a bonus. Coastal cottages from Charleston to Galveston were built this way for 200 years because the design paid for itself every single summer. Then slab-on-grade construction took over in the 1950s, cheaper and faster. A concrete pad poured straight on the dirt. The slab soaks up heat all day and radiates it into the house all night. And the crawl space breeze that cooled 10 generations of floors vanished from American building in a single decade. Double-hung windows used the right way. Your house probably has double-hung windows right now, and you have probably never used them correctly. Those windows were designed so both sashes move. Open the bottom sash a few inches and lower the top sash a few inches at the same time, and something remarkable happens. Cool air slides in through the bottom opening, while the hot air stacked against your ceiling drains out through the top, creating a slow, silent circulation loop inside a single window frame. No cross breeze required. No fan required. Victorian homeowners did this in every room as automatically as we flip a light switch, and housekeeping manuals from the 1890s spelled out the technique for new brides. It worked even on dead-still days because the temperature difference alone drives the loop. The physics is called convective exchange, and it is the same principle behind million-dollar ventilation designs in modern green buildings. Here is the sad part. Most double-hung windows in America today have their top sash painted shut, sealed by decades of homeowners who never knew it was supposed to move. The mechanism for free cooling is sitting in your wall right now, glued in place by a paint job, while the machine outside your window runs all day doing its job for money. Here is the thing nobody tells you about these old houses. They were not designed by architects. Most of them were built by carpenters working from pattern books and memory. Men who had never heard the words thermodynamics, but who had slept in a hothouse and refused to build another one. Every trick on this list was tested the hard way over generations in a world where a badly designed house did not mean a higher electric bill. It meant your family did not sleep, your food spoiled, and your infant was in genuine danger during the July heat waves that killed thousands. Design was survival, and then, in a single generation after World War II, we handed that entire accumulated intelligence over to a compressor and forgot it ever existed. The houses we build today are sealed boxes that are unlivable within hours of a power failure. The houses our great-grandparents built are livable forever. Keep that in mind as we climb toward the top, because the entries from here on are not just clever. They are a complete lost technology. The summer kitchen. Cooking on a wood-burning stove threw enormous heat into a house, enough to make the kitchen 110 degrees and keep the bedrooms hot past midnight. So families across the South and Midwest simply moved the problem outdoors. The summer kitchen was a small, separate building, 10 or 20 steps from the back door, with its own stove and work table. From May through September, every meal was cooked out there, and the main house never absorbed a single degree of cooking heat. Canning season, the hottest work of the year. Boiling kettles for hours in August happened entirely in the summer kitchen while the house stayed cool. The building cost almost nothing, rough lumber and a stovepipe, and it doubled as a wash house and a place to butcher in the fall. Thomas Jefferson had one. So did nearly every farm family in Missouri. Real estate listings in the 1890s advertised summer kitchens the way listings today advertise granite countertops. The design faded when gas and electric ranges produced less waste heat, and it died completely when air conditioning let us afford to be wasteful. But ask anyone who roasts a Thanksgiving-sized dinner in July why air conditioning cannot keep up, and you are asking someone who just rediscovered the problem the summer kitchen solved. Louvered shutters. The shutters bolted flat against the walls of new houses today are plastic decorations that do not even close. The originals were precision instruments. Operable louvered shutters swung shut over the window and held angled wooden slats that did 3 jobs at once. They blocked direct sunlight completely. They left the window itself wide open behind them, and they sliced the incoming breeze into thin, accelerated streams that swept the room. Shade, ventilation, and privacy in a single device adjustable by hand to follow the sun around the house. New Orleans ran on them. Charleston ran on them. Families closed the shutters on the east side in the morning, walked them around to the west side arrangement by afternoon, and opened everything at dusk. A room behind closed louvers with the window up stayed dim, breezy, and 10 degrees cooler than the street, and you could sleep behind them with complete security on the ground floor. They cost real money, a few dollars a window in 1900, and they were worth every cent for a century. Then air conditioning made them unnecessary. Vinyl siding crews ripped them off by the thousands, and builders started nailing up fake ones, screwed to the wall, incapable of moving. A plastic fossil of a machine we no longer remember how to use. High ceilings. Ceilings in old Southern homes ran 10, 12, sometimes 14 ft high, and every foot was functional. Heat stratifies. In any closed room, the hottest air collects at the top, and the coolest air settles at the bottom, where the people are. A 14 ft ceiling gives the day's heat a vast attic-like zone to pool in, far above your head, while you live in the cool layer below. In an 8 ft room, that same heat pools around your face. The difference between the floor and ceiling in a tall Victorian parlor could be 15 degrees on a summer afternoon, which meant the room felt comfortable at chair height, even while the crown molding baked. Pair those ceilings with transom windows, and the hot layer continuously drained itself out of the house. Builders understood this so well that ceiling height tracked climate on the map, modest in Maine, towering in Mississippi. Then came the post-war tract house with its flat 8ft lid, chosen because it saved materials and matched standard lumber lengths, and suddenly every American family was living with their heads in the hot zone. We even invented a term, cathedral ceilings, and sold the old standard back to wealthy buyers as a luxury feature. Your great-grandmother would have called it a ceiling, living in the cellar. 6ft underground, the earth holds a nearly constant temperature in the mid-50s, summer and winter, and old families used that fact like an appliance. The cellar was the coldest room in the house, and in the worst heat waves, it became living space. Families moved the daybed down there. Children napped on quilts on the cool, packed earth floor. Buttermilk and leftovers kept for days on stone shelves that never warmed. In the brutal heat waves of the 1930s, when hundreds of people were dying in Midwestern cities, newspapers ran official advice telling residents to spend the hottest hours below grade, and farm families were already doing it without being told. The root cellar kept a winter's worth of potatoes, apples, and canned goods at ideal storage temperature with zero energy, which is why nearly every homestead had one dug into a hillside or under the kitchen. This was geothermal cooling working perfectly, a full century before anyone sold it as a technology. Modern earth-sheltered homes and ground-source heat pumps run on exactly the same principle and cost tens of thousands of dollars. The version under your great-grandmother's kitchen cost a week of digging, and it never once broke down. The shotgun house. The shotgun house gets treated as a symbol of poverty, but it is one of the smartest hot climate designs America ever produced. 1 room wide, 3 or 4 rooms deep, every door lined up in a straight row from the front porch to the back. The name supposedly comes from the idea that you could fire a shotgun through the front door, and the shot would fly clean out the back without touching a wall. That straight-line alignment was the cooling system. Open the front door and the back door, and the entire house becomes a wind tunnel. Any breeze at all gets funneled down the narrow corridor, accelerating as it goes, sweeping every room in sequence. The narrow footprint meant every single room had windows, and no room was ever trapped in the dead center of the house. High ceilings and transoms handled the vertical heat. New Orleans, Louisville, and Houston filled entire neighborhoods with shotguns because working families needed houses that cooled themselves. And this shape did it better than mansions 4 times the size. Architects today praise narrow floor plans with single-room depth as advanced passive design. The shotgun house had it perfected by 1870 on a laborer's budget, and we spent a century looking down on it. Now, here is where the story turns because the disappearance of these designs was not an accident. When residential air conditioning hit the mass market in the 1950s, the company selling it had a problem. A well-designed house did not need much of their product, so the marketing did not just sell cold air. It sold a new definition of modern, and everything on this list got rebranded as old-fashioned. Sleeping porches became embarrassing. Awnings became something your grandmother had. Builders loved it because stripping out overhangs, porches, tall ceilings, and operable shutters made every house cheaper to build, and the buyer paid the difference to the power company forever after. By 1970, the knowledge was not just unfashionable, it was gone, missing from architecture schools, missing from building codes, missing from the pattern books. We did not outgrow these designs. We were talked out of them one advertisement at a time by an industry that profits every single month from a house that cannot cool itself. Cupolas and roof ventilators. That little window tower on top of old barns, courthouses, and Victorian homes was not there to look pretty. It was an engine. A cupola sits at the highest point of the building, and hot air, which has been rising all day and stacking up under the roof, pours out through its open windows. As that air escapes, it pulls replacement air in through every open window below, creating a constant upward draft through the whole structure without a single moving part. Engineers call it the stack effect. Farmers just called it how you keep a hayloft from cooking. Grand homes took the idea further with belvederes, full rooftop rooms where the family could sit in the evening breeze above the treetops, and with roof monitors, raised ridge lines with windows down both sides that turned the entire attic into an exhaust chimney. A house with a working cupola ventilates itself around the clock silently, forever, powered by nothing but the sun that created the heat in the first place. Modern sustainable architecture has brought the idea back under the name solar chimney, and it wins design awards. The men who framed barns in 1875 would want to know what took us so long. The sleeping porch. This is the one doctors prescribed. Between 1900 and 1930, physicians across America were convinced that fresh night air was essential to health, and they told patients, especially those with tuberculosis, to sleep outdoors year-round. The result was the sleeping porch, a screened room on the second floor, usually off the back of the house, open to the air on 2 or 3 sides, and lined with beds. On summer nights, the whole family migrated out there. The house held the day's heat, but the porch held the night breeze, and under a light quilt with the crickets going and the air moving across the screens, people slept through August nights that would be unbearable indoors. Children grew up thinking of it as camping without leaving home. Sears kit houses offered sleeping porches as standard options. Presidents had them. William Howard Taft slept on one at the White House. Entire neighborhoods, if you look at them today, still carry the telltale second-story, screened rooms. Most of them now walled in and air-conditioned, their purpose forgotten by the people sleeping inside them. We sealed up the best bedroom in the house and never asked why it was built. Thick masonry and adobe walls. In the Southwest, families lived comfortably through 105-degree days inside walls made of mud. Adobe walls 2 ft thick do something no modern stud wall can do. They absorb heat all day without letting it through, then release it slowly to the cold desert night. And by morning, they are cool again and ready to repeat the cycle. Engineers call it thermal mass and thermal lag. The wall acts like a battery for temperature, running 8 to 12 hours behind the outside air. The hottest moment inside an adobe house arrives around midnight, just as the desert outside is turning cold, and you can open the windows. The coolest moment inside arrives in the blazing mid-afternoon, exactly when you need it. Spanish missions, pueblo villages, and territorial ranch houses all ran on this cycle for centuries, comfortable in a climate that kills using dirt, straw, and sunshine as building materials. Stone farmhouses in Pennsylvania and brick row houses in the East work the same way at smaller scale. Then lightweight frame construction took over everywhere. Walls with the thermal memory of a cardboard box, and the desert filled up with thin-walled houses that need refrigeration from breakfast until bedtime just to stay survivable. The dogtrot house. Take 2 square log cabins, set them 10 ft apart, put one continuous roof over both, leaving the gap between them open at the front and back. That open gap is the dogtrot, and it is one of the most brilliant accidental wind machines ever built. The covered passage stays shaded all day, so the air inside it runs cooler than the air in the sun. Cool air is denser, pressure differences form, and a breeze funnels through that gap almost constantly. even on days when the open fields around the house are still. The family lived in the dogtrot. Meals were eaten there, beans were snapped there, cradles were rocked there, and the dogs naturally slept there, which is how it got the name. One cabin held the bedrooms, the other held the kitchen, so cooking heat never touched the sleeping side. The summer kitchen principle built right into the floor plan. Appalachian and Deep South families raised generations in dog trots, on subsistence budgets sitting in a self-generating breeze, while wealthier folks sweated in fancy enclosed houses. Modern architects now study the dog trot and design luxury homes around breezeway courtyards. The original was built with an axe by families who could not afford glass. The wraparound porch. The deep porch running around 2 or 3 sides of an old house was climate infrastructure, disguised as hospitality. A porch 8 or 10 feet heat deep keeps direct sunlight off the walls and windows behind it for the entire day, which means the hardest working cooling device on the house is simply shade at the scale of the whole building. The porch floor and ceiling stay cool. The air beneath the porch roof stays cool, and every breath of wind that reaches the windows arrives pre-chilled by that shaded buffer zone. Then there is the living side of it. From June to September, the porch was the family room. Supper moved out there, the radio moved out there, guests were received out there, and the evening was spent in rocking chairs facing the street while the house exhaled its heat through open windows behind them. Porch ceilings were painted haint blue, sky blue, partly from folk tradition and partly because it discouraged wasps and felt cooler to the eye. The porch also built something no machine ever has: neighborhoods where everyone knew everyone because everyone was outside. Air conditioning pulled the family into the sealed box. The front porch shrank to a decorative stoop, and both the cooling and the community went with it. Notice something about the top entries on this list. None of them are gadgets. They are decisions. Where to put the walls, how deep to make the roof, which direction to face the windows. And that is exactly why they vanished. A gadget can be sold to you every year. A decision is made once, and then it works for a century without generating a single dollar of recurring revenue. There is no subscription model for a dog trot. Nobody gets a monthly check because your ceilings are 12 feet high. The entire genius of pre-air conditioning design is that it front-loaded the intelligence and eliminated the operating cost, which is precisely backwards from how the modern economy prefers your house to work. The final 4 entries are the purest examples of that lost intelligence. And the top one is not even a structure. It is a skill: planted shade. Our great-grandparents planted trees the way we installed equipment, deliberately, by the calendar, with a 50-year plan. Big deciduous trees, oaks, maples, elms, went on the south and west sides of the house, positioned to throw afternoon shade across the roof and walls in summer. And because they dropped their leaves, those same trees stood bare in winter and let the low sun pour in to warm the house. A seasonal switch made of wood that turns itself. A mature shade tree can keep the surfaces beneath it dramatically cooler than open sun. And a fully shaded house needs a fraction of the cooling of an exposed one. The system went beyond trees. Fast-growing vines on trellises shaded porches in a single season. Grape arbors made cool green rooms in the yard. A row of trees on the windward side filtered and cooled the breeze before it ever reached the windows. New homeowners planted shade trees the first spring in the house, knowing their grandchildren would sit under them, and that patience was normal. Today, builders clear-cut the lot before construction because trees slow the crews down, and the new owner gets a black roof in full sun, a sapling from the garden center, and a 5-ton condenser to make up the difference. Evaporative cooling. Here is the physics trick engineers are building back into skyscrapers. When water evaporates, it absorbs enormous amounts of heat from the air around it, and people without electricity turned that fact into machinery everywhere. Desert families hung wet sheets and wet burlap in doorways and open windows, and the hot wind blowing through came out the other side, 10 or 15 degrees cooler. In the Southwest, a wet cloth over a window screen was standard summer equipment, refreshed with a bucket every few hours. Courtyard houses from Spanish tradition put a fountain or a shallow pool in the center, and the constant evaporation chilled the courtyard air, which then flowed into the rooms around it. Porous clay water jars, ollas, sweated moisture through their walls and kept drinking water cold by evaporating themselves cool. A refrigerator with no moving parts. On sleeping porches, a dampened top sheet turned a still hot night into a comfortable one. This is the exact principle inside every modern swamp cooler, and inside the evaporative systems now being installed on green office towers, celebrated as cutting-edge sustainable engineering. Your great-grandmother ran the same technology with a washtub and a clothesline, and she did not need a grant to figure it out. Citing the house for the wind. Before a single board was cut, the most important cooling decision had already been made, where the house would stand and which way it would face. Old builders read the land. They knew the direction of the prevailing summer breeze, and they turned the long side of the house to meet it, with windows aligned front to back so the wind could enter, cross every room, and leave. They set houses on knolls and ridge lines to catch air movement, never in hollows where heat and stillness pool. Near the Gulf and the Carolina coast, houses face the sea breeze so reliably that you could navigate by them. The Charleston single house is the masterpiece of the type. A house 1 room wide, turned sideways to the street, with its long porches aimed south, southwest, directly into the harbor breeze. A design so precisely tuned to its climate that the whole city is angled like a fleet at anchor. None of this cost a dime. It was pure knowledge, applied once, delivering comfort for 2 centuries. Modern subdivisions orient houses by one rule only: face the street, whichever way the street happens to run. Half the houses in America are pointed the wrong way, and they will pay for that mistake every summer, forever. The night flush ritual. The greatest cooling design of the pre-air conditioning age was not built into the house. It was built into the family, a daily rhythm that turned the whole building into a machine. It worked like this. At dusk, when the outside air finally dropped below the inside temperature, the house was thrown open. Every window, every transom, every door, upstairs and down. All night, cool air poured through and washed the day's heat out of the walls, the floors, the furniture, everything with mass. Then came the crucial move, the one we have completely forgotten. At dawn, before the sun climbed, the house was sealed, windows down, shutters closed, awnings dropped, curtains drawn on the sun's side. The night's coolness was locked inside the thick walls like ice in an icebox, and the house coasted on it through the entire afternoon. Done faithfully in a house with decent mass, the indoor peak could run 15 or 20 degrees below the outdoor peak day after day with zero energy. Every child knew the drill. Grandmothers enforced it like religion. Building scientists now call it night flush cooling and program it into automated smart buildings. Your great-grandmother called it opening up and closing up, and she never missed a day. Here is my challenge. Try just one of these this week. Drop the top sash of a double-hung window. Seal the house at dawn and open it at dusk. Hang a wet sheet in a doorway on the next hot afternoon. Then come back and tell me if the old-timers were wrong because I tried the night flush routine last July, and my thermostat has not forgiven me for what it learned. Drop the one you are going to try in the comments. I want to know if the sleeping porch gets more love than the dogtrot. And I want to know if anyone still has a working transom in their house, because these were not just houses. They were machines for living, and we traded them for a monthly bill. If these forgotten techniques have changed the way you look at your own home, please subscribe and like this video. We are uncovering the architectural wisdom that the industry tried to bury. Let's build a cooler future together. Our next deep dive into lost history is coming soon.